The meeting of the Board of Ellis County Commissioners will now come to order. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you could call the roll, Bobby.
Commissioner Joe LaRue.
Here.
Chair Butch Schleier.
Here.
Commissioner Neil Younger.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay. Order of business. There's no changes to the order of business. And just to mention that Mike Leiker is sitting in for Darren tonight. Okay. Prior minutes. Gentlemen, did you get a chance to review the prior minutes? Okay, then the minutes will stand as submitted. Consent agenda. Do we hear a motion for the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Issues from persons not on the order of business. And no one's jumping up, so we'll go on. Monthly financial reports. Commissioners, any questions, concerns?
Everything looks good.
Okay. Next agenda item is the High Plains Mental Health Update. Walt.
Commissioners, good evening. Walt Hill, I'm the Executive Director at High Plains Mental Health Center. Commissioner Younger's words echoed in my head all summer after we had our financial meetings and allocations to the outside agencies, when you ask that we come back, not just when we have hat in hand, that we provide regular updates to the commission, and that's what we are planning to do this evening. We did that in the fall, and we appreciate you willing to take the time to hear about updates, things that are happening. The timing of that is really good right now, because we have had a lot of things going on with particularly receiving 2 federal grants that will total up to $7 million over a 2-year period of time. The first grant is called a Certified Community Behavioral Health Center grant from Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration. Everything has long names when it comes to these projects. And it's to develop across the country certified community behavioral health centers. High Plains has existed for well over 50 years, but there never was a formal federal definition of a community mental health center. It's very odd, but the intent is to establish criteria for mental health centers across the country to operate under beyond just what states establish. And what this grant does is take where we're at now with existing level of services that you help subsidize along with the state, and add on top of that up to 20 additional positions in a variety of areas that we've not been able to provide services to our communities because there has not been the funding. This is a great opportunity with added federal funding to grow additional services to meet the needs of our 20 counties. A couple of areas in these 2 grants. The second grant is also SAMHSA block grant that allows us to expand services in various ways. So I'll talk about them together because we're implementing it all together. This allows us to build our substance abuse treatment services. We hear a lot more about substance use issues in a variety of forms, including fentanyl. The grant allowed us to bring on a special psychiatrist that treats people with addictions with some of the new medications, particularly for opioid dependence, which is a huge issue, be it someone overdosing on, West Point cadets overdosing in Florida on fentanyl this last weekend, or my great aunt who had hip surgery and just needs some more of that oxycodone to get through. It's a broad range of opioid issues, and there's a specialty in psychiatry now treating those problems, helping people get through the first year or so with some new medications that help in that area. We have a jail liaison to help the sheriff and the jail here. Last year, we provided almost $50,000 in services to jail residents, and there's a huge need to coordinate more with inmates and meeting their needs to get them mental health services and sometimes help them move on to follow up, which is the biggest problem, is getting them to follow up after they leave jail. With me tonight is Whitney Motor, James Gerstner, and Kaylee Connor. James is one of new positions to do community outreach. These grants focus on underserved areas of the community, agriculture community, Hispanic community, mature portions of the population. I'm getting over saying elderly because I just crossed that threshold. And people that are 65 plus generally are underserved for the mental health needs. And we're looking at how to outreach and increase those services. There's an additional specialized service that we believe will be helpful to the community. It's called an ACT team, Assertive Community Treatment Team. It's a group of staff, therapists, case managers, nurses who go out to where people are when they're in crisis and help them through a week or so, going into their homes regularly during the day to help them. That's just a quick overview of the kinds of services that we're adding. The federal money allows us to build up capacity, and then if I were where you're at, say, okay, how do you sustain all of that? And the model is that along with these projects is a change in the Medicaid model for reimbursement of services for mental health within these kinds of clinics. It's very similar to the reimbursement at the FQHC, which is based on the cost of services. So we will be moving by the end of the year to cost-based reimbursement for all of our services. So as we grow costs, those theoretically are covered under Medicaid for our Medicaid patients and able to support those services ongoing. The existing services, we do need counties and the state to maintain the level of effort, but because these grant funds don't provide for that first step, it provides that raising of the bar for these new services. In total, it's between 20 and 30 staff. Obviously, staffing is a huge issue, so perhaps a third of the staff for this project will be by telemedicine. For example, the addiction psychiatrist lives in Washington, D.C., and that's where he's going to stay, but he sees patients here in Hayes 5 days a week by telemedicine. So that's the the update on the two federal projects. It's been interesting gearing up. We've added space. The north wing of the second floor at Hadley building for additional office space. Again, adding quite a few positions, and It's our introduction into federal grants, which is a whole new learning process that we really haven't experienced. We wouldn't get into this if there wasn't an off-ramp for ongoing funding to this that won't come back upon local governments, state government, though the state will put in some through Medicaid. But it has to be, and we're designing it, it has to be self-sufficient for those added services. And there may be some carryover to some of the existing services to help support those. So that's probably the biggest thing that's happening currently. I did provide the first of our annual reports to you in your packet. We're scheduled in May, I think 15th, to do our actual formal annual report to you that includes specifics about numbers served in Ellis County. Just a little preview of that. We did serve 2,288 Ellis County citizens last year, which was an increase of about 100 more served. The final thing is not as optimistic, and I want to mention a problem that our counties and our hospitals, our sheriffs, we and families are facing. That is significant delays in patients being admitted to inpatient psychiatric care. There are, in the month of December, there were 30 patients who needed to go to Larned, not just from our area, but from the Larned catchment area, who waited an average of 60 hours each to get into the psychiatric hospital. That meant that our local emergency rooms, our local sheriff's departments had to spend 60 hours each with those 30 people waiting to get a bed at Larned. Larned is budgeted to operate at 90 patients. They are licensed by the state to operate at 90, but they have been operating in the neighborhood of 65 beds, which creates this backlog. This is for adults. We still have major issues since KVC and the state pulled the inpatient psychiatric unit out for kids that was here in town. We keep hearing that's supposed to reappear in 2023, but frankly, that will be great when that happens. Frankly, right now, families are very reluctant to have to drive to Kansas City or Wichita when they have a kid in crisis and they're trying to get by. These are often kids at Westside School who have major psychiatric problems. Talked with Sheriff Brown, with Chief Scheibler, where some weekends spend much of my weekend on the phone with Hayes Med about these cases, trying to figure out what to do with them. In some cases, even Larned is sending patients into the community hospitals for medical care, and then it takes us several days of trying to convince Larned to take the patient back. And our community hospitals are not prepared to deal with patients with these kind of severe psychiatric disorders. Just make you aware, we're advocating with our legislators everywhere we can about this issue, but it is a major burden on our local hospitals and law enforcement. There are other issues at Larned that have been in the news about security issues and escapes, and it's just a very concerning situation. So I'll stop at that point. Would be glad to answer any questions that you might have or address any other issues.
Does Larned have a problem hiring individuals? Is that why they stay at the 65-bed capacity?
Commissioner Schleier, I think it was a combination of difficulty hiring staff. I think a third of their nurses are agency nurses that they're bringing in because they can't hire nurses. Of course, they have to pay 5 times for what they would for a staff nurse that they have to pay for an agency nurse. They also pulled back because of COVID and didn't have enough rooms. I can't second guess how they made those decisions. All I know is the can is getting kicked out here to our communities to deal with these problems. And I have to say our law enforcement agencies and hospitals, particularly Hayes Med, are just great to deal with through this very difficult time. A lot of places wouldn't, but I think, we take care of our own here.
Has it been difficult for you to hire individuals needed with these new grants?
Yes, it has. We made some adjustments with one of the grants to our compensation. We put in place bonuses this year to be more attractive, quarterly bonuses that I think have helped bring in staff. And once we get our salaries up, then that federal cost-based reimbursement should kick in and help support that. But it's tough to hire mental health professionals in rural America. It's tough across the country to hire mental health professionals. There's a real shortage. But like I said, we're doing about 1/3 of these positions we are hiring with using televideo.
Commissioner, any questions for Walt?
Nope.
Okay. Commissioner Neal?
The KVC, what made that right go away? Any reasoning?
That's above my pay grade.
Okay.
I never quite got it straight. There were some issues about licensing, the facility, mixed populations in that facility, whether it had to be sprinkled or not, whether the numbers weren't there. I don't know. Senator Billinger 2 years ago was a champion to get the funding of, I think, $1.5 million to reopen that unit, to get it going again. It just has not happened yet. I think the RFP went out, the bid was let, but it's above my pay grade what's happening with that.
Understand. Another thing, thank you for coming and your staff part of it, so good to see you guys.
Thank you very much. We'll be back, I think it's May 15th. We're scheduled for our formal review. If we can do anything at all to provide more information, please let us know. Thank you for your support.
Okay, thank you, Walt. Okay, our next agenda item is the Grow Hayes update. Doug?
Well, good evening. Doug Williams with Grow Hayes. I'm the executive director. Always a pleasure to stand before you all and see you. A few things I wanted to go over. I think you all had the information I sent out, and I promise not to go over all of it. I'll keep it briefer than that. But the first thing I wanted to talk about was we filled a new position on January the 3rd, which is what we came before you last year to ask for some additional funding so we could do that. And David Klingon, who I think you all know, and he's in the audience, was hired to be our Director of Recruitment and Retainment. And it's been a terrific deal so far in that I didn't realize how much we weren't getting done now that we've got him to be able to help us in doing some things. In particular, you may have heard about the base grants that the state of Kansas put out with the ARPA funds, and about mid-February, they came out and they said they had $100 million that was available for economic development and that type of thing grants, but you had till February 28th to get it submitted. Well, that's about a 2-week time frame, I think 15 days. And there's just no way that we could have gotten those done, but because of David and his background, we were able to submit in Ellis County a total of 4 grant requests. Butch was good enough to give us a letter of support on a couple of them. And we'd like to think that there's at least a good chance that we'll get one or two of them. I don't know. They're supposed to decide on these by the end of March, but we had two that were for housing projects, and then we had two that were for basic economic development projects. So thanks to David, we were able to get those out. So your money has been well invested. Which brings me to the next thing, and Walt kind of touched on it, and Butch, you asked the questions. Workforce is a critical shortfall in Ellis County. We have a real workforce issue. And one of the components that, in terms of solving that workforce issue, is housing. We also have a serious housing problem in Ellis County. And Lisa's going to talk to you next. I looked at your agenda, and she's going to talk to you about valuations. Well, you know, we live in a supply and demand world, and when you don't have enough supply, demand is high, prices go up, and that's what's happened in Ellis County. So we're diligently working on some housing projects. If you've been out on East 22nd, east of the Technical College lately, you'll see the Tallgrass Second Edition. Heart of America Development Corporation developed 36 lots in that edition, and currently there's 10 homes under construction. There'll be another 14 started sometime in the next 30 days. Building a home right now is not without its challenges, as you can imagine, with OSB being $42 a sheet and a 2x4 being $10. But thus far, these contractors out there are working through it. All 10 of these that they're building are sold.
Look, strategically, you're anticipating Hayes to grow. Is that correct?
I am. And actually, I believe Hayes is growing right now.
Okay.
We don't have any, I've been looking for a way I can validate that, but if you look at the number of listings in Hayes, 2 years ago, there was 101 houses on the MLS. As of a couple weeks ago, there were 9 homes for sale. We're at historically low vacancy rates in apartments, while all at the same time, the enrollment for on-campus students has gone down a fair amount. And these are people that would traditionally fill these homes or these apartments and things. So people have come in from somewhere, and I think there's a lot of urban migration going on, some retirees moving here. But yes, I believe we are going to grow if we can solve some of our problems.
And one of those problems would be water.
It would be.
Are we going to get a permanent source of water in Hayes or not?
Well, obviously, the city is working diligently on that, but it's in the hands of a judge down in Edwards County or wherever he is.
I believe it's been in his hands for almost a year.
It has, I think, over a year.
Yeah.
And, we continue to hear any day now, and we've heard that for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
But water is critical, no doubt. We need to solve that issue.
Absolutely.
If we can get that done, of course, there's a time involved about building the pipeline and all the things that go with that.
Mm-hmm.
But it does provide I won't say permanent, because nothing's permanent, but certainly a long-term solution to some of the water challenges that we face in Ellis County.
We were fortunate last year we had a wet season.
We have, but it's not looking very good right at the moment.
I know it's not.
We're pretty dry.
Is the unemployment rate pretty low or high here in Hayes?
It's very low. It was 1.4 in November and December, and it went up to 1.7 in January, but I suspect that's only because of the seasonal workers that do go to work over the Christmas.
Percentage was something that I struggled with where I was at, and it's a low number, but it also represents only those who are actively seeking work.
Yeah.
So if people have kind of fallen off the system, it doesn't mean they're drawing unemployment anymore, obviously, but they may have decided to retire early or pursue other options, be it a side gig or whatever, but they're not working at where we need them to, I would imagine. So it was really neat to see some apartments coming down the pike. 225 is, again, you could debate the price tag, but for most of the employers in the area, they're going to need more entry level kids fresh out of trade school or college, and for a lot of those folks, they're going to start off with an apartment. So it was good to see apartments coming. I didn't know if there was any more possible multi-unit housing coming down the pike. And also, did you hear any more on that development group that bought up the trailer parks?
I have heard a little bit on the development group that bought the trailer parks. Initially they were going to put a bunch more in, but I think they've had some growing pains, so they're trying to work through some of those. But I think they will be adding some mobile homes to the market. There are a couple of other apartment complexes being contemplated, so I think we will see more of those. And, the nice thing about housing at 225, while that may not be affordable for all, it may free up homes at 100 or 125, which are affordable. So inventory added to the.
One of the ways that PVD monitors county appraisers is by conducting an annual ratio study. And the ratio study looks at open market sales, and then they compare that to our values for that year. We are considered to be in compliance with that study if our values are within a plus or minus from $90,000 to $110,000 appraised value for that property. So in this first one, this first slide here, that shows you a history of the state's ratio study for our residential properties. As you can see, from 19 to 2015, from 2009 to 2015, on average, our appraised values were within at least 5% of the sale price. In 2016, we were starting to see the effects of the drop in oil price we had locally that had an effect on our local market. And although we were consciously trying to keep values down because of that, we were still just slightly above 100% on our values there for a couple years. Then we get to 2019 and 2020, that big drop there. As you can see, some of the things that Doug mentioned that were happening locally and statewide had an effect on our values. For 2020, the state is telling us that we were only 94% on average of our values, only 94% of the sale prices. And just this morning, we received the preliminary 2021 ratios, and we're down to 91.2%. Our values are compared to sale prices. So when we hit 2020, I started collecting news articles that had to do with the local real estate market, state real estate market. And these are just some of the headlines that I have kept, that I've written here, but here are some of the major ones. Hayes real estate market extremely tight despite sales slowdown. The housing market was a wild ride this year. Kansas housing market grows hotter. Single-family homes increase in price by $36,000 due to lumber shortage. Expect an unseasonably hot winter for home sales. And these headlines are not unique to us. That's statewide, even nationwide. In 2020, we started seeing record low mortgage rates. And as one loan officer told me, that some of their clients were able to afford a larger purchase price for a home due to the low interest rates. In 2022, the Ellis County Housing Outlook, published by Wichita State University's Center for Real Estate, illustrates this. In fact, when they did this series, they did it for all the counties and some of the major cities in the state. They called their series Out of This World, just to reflect what's been going on in the market in the state. Although their data is derived from the Mortgage Bankers Association, our local trends have followed this, just like they have shown here. And also, even as Doug has mentioned, Doug Williams, our area is experiencing a shortage of homes for sale. In January, I checked multi-list service. On that day, there were 10 homes for sale in Hayes, similar to what Doug has mentioned. For the whole county, there were 16 homes listed on the multi-list. And I even say here that Doug with Grow Hayes, if you've listened to his interviews or any of his podcasts, he's talked about the Hayes area shortages, just as like he has talked about the housing shortages tonight. And the RHID project east of the hospital, like he said, there's one way they're trying to narrow the gap between the supply of homes and the demand for homes. All right, let's go to the next one here. Another portion of the WSU report shows the Ellis County market, the trend of our sale prices in the county. As you can see, we kind of hit a little low point there at the beginning of 20, but it's the sale prices for houses in the county have increased drastically, in my opinion. So this is some information from the multi-list service. In 2019, we saw 326 home sales. In 2020, we saw 409, and 21, only 340. As you can see, the average sale price has increased from $165,000 in 2019 up to $206,040 in 2021. I've shown you other agencies' information here, not just ours, right away, just so you know this data is not unique to our office. This is coming from other entities that are tracking the home sales in the county. In 2021, we had a steady decline in our average sale price compared to our value. And that's what this shows. This is all of 2021, where we started just under 95% of the appraised value to the sale price. You can just see month by month, our value is just getting that further and further away of the actual sale prices. And since our job is to set a fair market value, what we need to do is to be closer to that 100 mark that's shown on this graph. So what that means is we're striving to get to that 100%, but to do that, we've got to raise values of homes. On the commercial side, shows the state's ratio study for commercial values. As you can see, we fluctuate a lot with these. To me, there's a big difference in valuing commercial versus residential. First of all, of course, we have a lot more residential properties than we do commercial. Commercial, a lot of that sale price depends on different factors like, is that building or that property suited to what the buyer is looking for? Would they have to go in and do a lot of changes to the property to suit them? Is it close to where they want to be? You know, it might make a difference if the property is on Vine Street, North Vine or South Vine, or is it downtown? So last year for 2020, we did have to raise, or for 21, we did have to raise our commercial values significantly, because you can see in 20, we were down to 81.5% of sale prices of commercial properties. But then this year, we're looking at another increase because we need to get our values up closer to that 100%. And a lot of that increase is due to what Doug referenced, is construction costs. Construction costs have gone up, and a lot of our commercial properties, because we do not have a lot of sales, are valued on a cost basis, a replacement cost new and then less depreciation. So then we have one exception to properties that are not valued at fair market value, and that's agricultural land. It is valued at a use value, which the state sets, and that's based on a landlord's net income and the type of soil is on the ground, and then what kind of productivity use it is, whether it's crop, whether it's grass, or where it's irrigated. In the past, we saw a lot of the counties out west here saw huge increases in agricultural land values, but that's tapered off a little bit, and We just had a little bit of increase this year from last year. So let me finish up here. We are asked a lot of times when we send out our valuation notices, what the typical increase is for a house. You know, if I went up 10%, why did my neighbor go up 8%, or things like that. But so it depends on a lot, on several factors. Depends where the house is located in the county. It depends what the houses in your designated area are selling for. Overall, in Hayes, you can figure that a house has gone up 15% this year. And we had an area east of Hayes, east part of Hayes, east of Canterbury, that we were seeing 25% or greater increases in their values, because those homes over there are selling a lot more than what they were last year. And it's our job to keep up with that, and so we're having to raise values considerably this year. And I'll finish with, like I said, we're mailing our notices tomorrow. And once a property owner receives that notice, if they have any questions, all they have to do is call our office. I encourage them to ask for their property record card. If they have a home, ask for their comparable sheet. That will show all the a lot of the attributes for their house, plus it'll show the same thing for the 5 comparables home sales that were used to value their property. They will have until April 14th to contact our office to schedule a hearing, and we can discuss their value at that time. We have to have all those done within a month of that, by March 15th, so we can finalize our values and get values to the county clerk. I know I've thrown out a bunch of numbers. Do you have any questions for me?
No, I really have no questions, Lisa, but I would expect you're going to get a lot of phone calls.
I know you're right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Joe?
No?
No questions. Just thank you for, well, frankly, doing all of that and explaining all of it, and hopefully what you've conveyed to us is something that the public will see and hopefully have a better understanding of the process that went on behind what is about to hit their mailbox.
Yeah. And, part of our job is also education, the public of what that valuation notice means and where it comes from.
Commissioner Neal?
Yeah, I'm glad to see you here, and you explained it very well. The ones in the rule, is that a little bit different as far as valuation, or is it about the same? Is it going to be that 10, 15%?
Roughly, yes.
Okay.
They'll see increases also.
Okay.
The rural homes, we saw a significant increase in those sale prices as well.
Okay. And thank you, and some of your staff is here. Thank
Yep.
you, Eugene, for coming, and thank you for the
Okay.
presentation.
Thank you, Lisa.
All right, thank you.
Okay, the next agenda item is the Ellis County Fire Truck replacement. Lyle?
Good evening, Commissioners. Lyle Pantel, Emergency Manager, Assistant Fire Chief. I come before you this evening seeking to purchase a new F-550 chassis, model year 2022, from Lewis Ford in Hayes. As Fire Chief mentioned to you a few meetings ago, we have a brush truck titled Mini 51 that has had extensive engine issues. We've gone through the process of replacing a turbo, high-pressure oil pump regulator, the high-pressure oil sensor, as well as the air intake system, and we're still having issues. Our respected mechanic in town, who actually works on our entire fleet, has estimated the cost to replace the entire engine at $17,000 to $19,000, which is just unfeasible at this time, as the truck is nearly or just over 15 years old. And for a first responder vehicle, we're pushing the upper limits of the life expectancy of that. And this purchase is budgeted in our capital budget for fiscal year 2024. So we're just a little bit ahead of schedule, but we do have the money in our funds to make this purchase. We did a local search, as well as a search within 500 miles of Hayes, and we really only came up with 2 that were able to meet our needs, and that was Hayes Ford and Long MacArthur Ford. All the others that we found were either sold or not on the lot anymore. So with this information, I'd humbly request that you approve our ask here. I would stand for any questions.
Sure, I have a question for you, Lyle.
Yes, sir.
You just want to purchase a chassis and then move all the components off of one truck to another?
Yes, sir, and that has been our plan for quite some time, to re-chassis our fire beds. It does require us to stick to certain types of chassis that these fire beds are designed for, which could kind of hamstring us in the long run. So this certain truck is for a Ford F550, which is why we're looking for a new Ford F550 chassis. But honestly, we are actually replacing the lesser of the, barring the COVID expenses and everything, the lesser of the 2 most expensive components on the truck, keeping the fire bed, the water tank, the pump, manifold, all our tools and the compartments available, and not redoing that portion.
And then as you replace these components, what is still the life expectancy of the components?
I believe those are, excuse me, those can be anywhere from 20 to 30 years, depending on actual use and what is intended for.
Okay. Okay, Commissioners? Commissioner, you have any questions?
No, sir.
Commissioner Neal?
As far as us purchasing this, are we going to repaint it to our red color?
That's affirmative, and I believe the one that we found is in an Oxford white, which we have, our budget can absorb the cost to repaint that our red color that Darren is in favor of moving towards and moving away from our green, yellow, I don't know what color to call it.
And as far as value for the 2007, there's probably nothing there. It's probably shot.
Yeah, it's going to be very minimal. We still have some mechanical issues within the engine block itself that are going to make it darn near impossible to get any kind of real value out of on a resale.
Okay.
I guess from now on out, just for the future, if we could look at these a little closer, and then we can maybe get a little bit of value out of them when we trade them off. But you just never know when one's going to do
Yeah.
what this done.
Unfortunately, the term that the mechanic told us is dusted. The engine was dusted, in which case it takes only about a tablespoon of dirt, grains, sand, soot to get into the engine to cause significant damage on the inside, and that can be anything from the air intake cover was not completely sealed down, the gasket on the air filter was torn, any number of things could cause that to happen. And as you can imagine, driving around a fire truck on fire scene and the bumpy hills and terrain that we go through, it wouldn't be very hard for any one of those things to happen.
Okay. If this truck is approved, Lyle, when would you get the truck? When would it
Their
be in
expected
service?
delivery date is about 6 months
Okay.
on just the chassis, and I would imagine probably a 2 to 3 week turnaround on rebedding the new chassis with the fire bed that's on there. So I imagine this, if delivered on time, we could probably have this in service by the end of October or the middle of November.
Okay.
So are you telling us then the 07 was that bed moved already from another truck? Or is the pump and valves and everything?
That I cannot
Okay.
speak to, Commissioner. I don't
that's
know
fine.
the status on that one. That was here long before I started with the county,
Okay.
and I'm not privy to all of its history.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Well, Commissioners, I will make a motion to approve the purchase of a new Ford F-550 chassis from Lewis Ford in the amount of $59,520. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Thank you, Lyle.
Thanks, Lyle.
Thank you, Commissioners. Sign, I'll pick it up tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay, the next agenda item is the DSNW grant support letter. Mike, Jerry?
Yes, before you is a letter of a request from Jerry Michaud, the president of DSNWK. He has asked for a letter of recommendation, or I'll let Jerry explain it.
Oh, sure. Good evening, Commissioners. Jerry Michaud, President, Developmental Services, Northwest Kansas, and appreciate the chance to come before you and ask for your help on something that doesn't actually cost you anything, which is nice. A couple years ago, we pursued something put out by the Department of Commerce called Community Service Tax Credits. We received a grant then for $250,000 in tax credits, which equates to double that in donations. At that time, they were used for capital projects, repairs, maintenance, those kinds of things that we have no funds for. And so we are pursuing a grant again through the Department of Commerce. Their lid is now $200,000. It used to be $250,000 per grant request, so we're pursuing that. One of the things that we, as a grant, well, not a grantee yet, we hope to be, but as a requester, is to kind of show support. We have a regional footprint of 18 counties. The largest portion of that is right here in Ellis County. And we've reached out to the commissions throughout the 18 counties. We're reaching out to legislators both in the state and federally, asking for support for this. It's a direct, if granted, it's a direct kind of infusion of resources. That's why it comes through the Department of Commerce, of monies back into the economy, and it serves a benefit for nonprofit organizations like ours. So our request is for a letter of support. If that is something that you all would be interested in doing that, I would hope that you would. It's a kind of a win-win situation. It's not a guarantee, but it certainly is moving forward. We also have requests from individual donors who would or may have an interest in pledging towards that, and we can thereby demonstrate that we have people that are interested in these, and that none would be sitting on the table, if you will. It's a 50% tax credit, so a $1,000 donation gets that donor $500 back off of their taxes, state taxes. So.
Okay, well, Jerry, we sure do appreciate the service you provide to Ellis County, and I'm sure the board wants to help you any way we can.
Perfect.
Gentlemen, do you have any questions or concerns?
Just happy to be supportive, and thank you for all you do.
Yeah,
Okay.
appreciate it.
And I believe Bobby will have that signed letter for you.
Perfect. Yeah, just by,
it to you tomorrow.
oh yeah, just, we're assembling it by April 1, I think is what we are targeting. So yeah, you'd be fine.
Okay.
And then we'll get the whole application off before the end of April, so.
Okay.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you, Jerry. County Administrator Report. Mike?
Mike Lecker, IT Director and acting proxy for County Administrator. Darren had asked me to mention one thing. He wanted to remind you of the Little KAC meeting that's coming up in April out in Colby. Wanted to know if any of you were interested in going to that. I believe there's kind of is there a deadline, Bobby?
April 4th.
Okay. And then there's another event, the Kansas County Commissioner Conference, also in April 26th through 28th in Salina. He was just wanting me to ask if any or all of you were wanting to attend those. So,
I won't be attending, Mike.
will not.
I will not.
Okay.
The one in Colby, I will.
Okay.
The other one, it's too long being away from work.
Okay.
I'll do both.
Both? Okay. The only other thing that I have is more IT related, but I wanted to mention the Tyler New World Public Safety System Go Live that occurred or began last Tuesday. If you may recall, through the use of CARES funding or COVID funding, we were able to purchase a new public safety solution, and that solution provides, it's a system for all public safety agencies, 911 dispatch, Ellis County Sheriff, and Ellis County Fire Departments, the City of Hayes, Ellis and Victoria Police Departments and Fire Departments, the Fort Hays University Police, as well as Ellis County EMS. So it was a huge project covering a lot of public safety agencies. As I said, our go live started last Tuesday. It's been going very well as migrations go. They're always painful for the users. It's a slow and tedious process, but it's going very well. We had the Tyler folks on site last week, which was very helpful. We have one on site this week, but it's going well. So we are live with the new system, and I'm not going to say that all of the employees are excited, but it's a painful, there are growing pains that go with it. So, but that is progressing. So it's finally good to see that go live date come and go. So the only other thing that I wanted to mention was that we were recently asked by the City of Ellis if they could piggyback on our panic alarm system that we have throughout all of our buildings, and they were going to purchase the equipment. They just needed approval from us to use our system, and a couple of my staff spent a couple hours installing it or helping them install it. So that went live last week. So the Ellis City Clerk's office, which includes the police department, has the same panic alarm system that we do here now. So that was kind of helpful to reach out, or they reached out to us to help them. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mike. County Commission reports. Commissioner Neal?
Yeah, just to add to Mike's thing, I tried to make it over to Ellis, and they were really excited about getting that panic thing put in. So anyhow, and then I was at the Northwest Kansas Correction and the juvenile meeting last week. I guess when we had the snowstorm, so they're still talking about possibly getting a new facility, which is good. Maybe we can take the one on 11th and Fort and make it into apartments, but it's always a thought. But yeah, it was a pretty short meeting, but there was a lot talked about. And I also sat in with Vern Reuter last week. I wanted to let him get settled in before I went and visited with him, and he talked very highly of his employee. So he's doing us an excellent job in his staff. And also would like to thank Bobby for going to the school and with the children and helping them out, getting them to vote, and pretty nice. And the teachers that helped out, that was very, 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 very good for you, Bobby. So, and then I would like to also thank Mike for sending the email out with the war. So, with the computers, so at my place of work, we're getting all the time too, so keep everybody aware of it and everybody be smart and we'll get through everything. So, that's all I have.
Okay, Commissioner Joe? Okay, and I have no report. Okay, if there's no other business, then this meeting will adjourn at 6:03.